Alright, so I got in the middle of something I kind of forgot to bring you guys along, so I'm stopping for a second. And what I'm looking to do is add in my waterproof fuse relay box. This is kind of like a Jeep accessory that somebody makes online, and I had this in my RZR and I ended up taking it out and saving it for future side-by-side, and this is now that project. So basically what it is it's a nice neat way where you can get your 12 volt power and ground. It runs into this relay and fuse box, just a watertight seal. And then this has your hot leads for your switches. And then you've also got a lead for sending power to your accessories. And then of course you got to ground them some way. But on the Talon, these are actually pre-wired with some heavier gauge wire that runs up here for a winch. This is from the factory, this blue tape, and it's Christmas treed into this part of the frame. The other end of this I think is up in the battery box. I haven't really dug in that close yet, but I'm assuming it's also in there in blue tape and you just have to connect it to the leads. So I'm going to show you where this is, and I'm figuring out where that's going, so I'll bring you along once I get that decided. Okay, it's gotten to be pretty late at night, so I'm going to quit, but I've gotten some progress made. And I have the waterproof box mounted here. I went ahead and went into the frame just to secure it on both sides. This way it's going to be accessible just by removing the hood, and I won't have to take this whole piece off. Update on day 2 of wiring progress. I've kept the fuse box in the same place, and then instead of doing the positive distribution bar over here and ground and everything, I went ahead and moved it to the back. So this is the factory, or these are the factory winch wires. Those are hot now. And then I sent, let's see here. So this right here, just got the excess ran, and that ground is going, I'll show you where that's going to the frame. And then everything is relatively neatly ran through the tunnel. Let me grab a light to help show everything. Okay, so this piece of mesh here, that's running back to the distribution bar. And then I also have this 8 gauge wire. These are both 8 gauge wire. It's running down to the factory frame. So this is the ground wire, and then I have it going to this right here. And then around back, what I'm doing is I have 2 separate bus bars. So we'll start with the positive. So I've got this 4-post bus bar to send all my positive power. This is running up to the waterproof, the fuse relay box. This is going to be the winch. And then the shorter one right here is a jumper that I made to get from the battery box. So when we look inside the battery box, this is the short jumper that's supplying power from the battery to the bus bar. And I wanted to get everything out of the battery box because there's really just not a whole lot of room in here to add a whole bunch of stuff. So that's why I only wanted to have one wire running directly in here and then distribute that out there where I can get to it and service it pretty easily if need be. Then when we start talking about grounding things out back, what I've done is I've added this little bus bar here. Get some light out of the way here. And basically what I'm going to be able to do now is just run everything as its own individual ground, or I can run them all back like my switches. I'll combine all those into one because I know how many there's going to be. But this should help just clean up the grounds, and then if I ever need to troubleshoot something, I can take them off individually and figure out what's going on. So they'll just screw in right there. So I know back here I'm going to have the LED whip, so I can ground those right to it, and then I'll probably have some pod lights as backup lights I can ground to it. Like I said, I'll ground all the switches from the dash. I'll run them back and do them all at once. And then the light bar I'm going to run back here as well. Okay, so I just got my plan for switches together. What I did is I drilled a hole kind of in the back, if you're looking at it from the front of the Talon, on the right side of that cubby hole. Just fed all my switch wires in through there, and then I'm gonna have a switch plate. And then this little guy right here is pre-wired as accessory key on power, and you can buy a little harness to jump off of this. So it sits right here, and I'm going to use that to function as the key on power for the switches to do like the lights and whatnot for backlighting, and then I'll run the constant power off of one of the fuse circuits that's already on that distribution block, which is what these serve as right here. So I'll just use one of these wires, or potentially even all of them. I may just go ahead and do that. That way they're all separate if there's ever a problem or something like that. And it'll save me a little bit of daisy chaining. More Talon wiring updates. I think this is the third day total I've been working on it. It hasn't been like 3 total days. I've just been coming up to the garage a couple hours at a time. And what I'm doing is power and ground that runs back to the rear distribution bar with the ground. You've seen that already. Then for these rocker switches, you've got to have, well, you don't have to have, but you can have 2 grounds, a constant power, your lead to go to whatever your accessory is, and then also accessory power. If you do all that and wire it separately, you can have essentially where you turn the key on, the lower light of the rocker switch will light up. You can see it at night. It's just a little nicer looking. And then when you turn the switch on, the top will light up. So I'm doing the full setup because I want the accessory light. And in order to tap into that, from the factory, there's going to be a blue plug right here. I cut that off just because I didn't want to have to wait or buy a harness, and plus I already had a nice waterproof quick connect. So I snipped it off and spliced into the wires, and then taped it up nicely right here, and then secured it to the frame. And it's running over here to the waterproof connector. And then let me get you a little bit lower so you can see it's looped back, and the reason I did that is just to give it a little extra slack to get in there. This longer wire is going to run to the voltmeter, and this accessory on wire is going to be for my winch, the winch switch, which I believe is going to go through the glove box, but I'll figure all that out shortly. So inside, got a slew of wires in here. All of these red wires right here are accessory key on wires. And what I did is I made 7 leads coming from one, soldered them all together, and then ran them to that accessory plug I showed you up here, the waterproof one. So those are going to provide the lower light power when the key's on. All of these wires are built into the waterproof fuse relay box. So these are just fused constant circuits. So that's what these are. Then these wires here are the switch legs. So this will, when you use the switch, this goes on the lower left terminal. It tells the relay to turn on, and it sends power to whatever accessory you're trying to turn on. So what I'm doing today is making the switch panel that's going to go here. And I didn't want to buy the $300 Honda kit just because, quite frankly, I don't think it's worth $300. So I've got my cardboard. I'm going to make a template, and then I've got some 3/16 black ABS plastic that I'm going to use as well. So here's the highly scientific cardboard template. This is the very first one I did, and I'm not going to use this one to cut on the plastic right there just yet. Really what I'm doing is just trying to get something to start off of, and then I've transferred it over to here, and I'm going to try and even these measurements up a little bit just to make it look nicer. So I'm going to take my tape measure here next and then get things adjusted on that and try to make the angles a little bit sharper. Then what I will do is I will cut that out and transfer it to the plastic, and we'll get rocking and rolling on some switches. Right, here is the template I'm going to use. The 4 dots are what I'm going to use for the push pins, and really I'm just going to use that same style push pin to mount it in. Put some 5/16 holes in the plastic, of course, and then it'll mount. There's going to be a small gap, probably there on either side, but that's fine until I can get a powder coated metal one that somebody will CNC. Is this perfect? Nope. But is it good enough to let me go until the aftermarket has time to catch up? Yes. So bear with me and we'll do the plastic. Now I'm ready to cut switch holes out. I'm trying to adjust this where you can see, but the grid, so the X is where each switch will be. This is going to be a 5 switch panel with a 6th opening for the voltmeter. And I just bought a cheap like $10 voltmeter off Amazon. Just got a positive and negative, and all it does is give a digital readout. So I think what I'm gonna do, since these switch openings are about 3/4 inch wide, I'm just gonna use a 3/4 inch bit and start in the middle. Just go straight through to get the width open, and then I'll use a jigsaw to cut the rest out. My last electrical accessory is finally wired, that being the winch, and I'm not really gonna do much of a walkthrough on that. Setting up a winch is setting up a winch on an ATV or UTV. So these Talons come pre-wired, so you're only gonna need to use one set of the wires that come with the winch, and they sent 2 sets of red and black wires, so I'm not sure if that was a mistake or if one was actually supposed to be yellow and blue. No worries regardless. This is your positive terminal. The darker one is your negative, or yellow and blue, depending on what color you have. So I loomed the wire with some plastic wire loom, and then zip tied it right there. And then followed the frame up, put another zip tie here. We'll get on top where we have a little better light. And then followed on back with another zip tie and ran all the way up to the cross member. Went underneath, and then my solenoid is mounted over here. I did two nuts, 1 bolt here through, and then just put another zip tie over here. This thing isn't going to go anywhere. Again, these are the factory wires that come with the Talon. You do have to hook those up in the back on the battery, depending on how your wiring is set up. That'll be in another video for mine. And then these go to the winch. This is the key-on accessory power. This particular wire right here, I ran out of my dash with the rest of my accessory wires. So again, depending on how your setup is, that may be slightly different. What I did to get power to that was stole it off of this factory plug and then rewired my own quick connect on, but I won't get too deep into that right now. Then I ran this is part of the solenoid, then this is the single part of the splitter. Ran it over here, it comes out into 2. This wire runs into the glove box to the remote fed winch in and out. Then this is the wireless receiver. This part of the video should be the last of this wiring video. So everything has been buttoned up now. Obviously I've got the hood off just so I can show you kind of how everything turned out. This is all that you can see when that piece of plastic, and then of course the splash guard is put back on. So that is the brains of the operation. My winch solenoid is up under here. And then I'm still waiting on my CNC switch plate, but the concept is going to be the exact same. So in the meantime, I've just got some Gorilla Tape on this plastic one that I made. And it honestly really doesn't look that bad, but it's a $20,000 machine. So I figure why not get a $49 switch plate. And that's going to be from XTC Power Products, I think is the name. I obviously just don't have it yet. So key on, I've got the little voltmeter, and then of course all the backlights come on with the switches, and then when you turn them on, the top will light up as well, and the accessory comes on. So I've got a light bar on the roof, 2 pod lights on the back, a 2-way radio up here in the cab. That's a TYT 8600. Obviously there's no mic on it, and then I've got the Swamp Donkey overhead music system. It's got the RGB LEDs in it. That's not on any kind of switch here because it's got its own internal switching, LED whips, and then rock lights as well in the fender wells. So we'll just flip those on real quick while we look. There is a rock light there, another one on that part of the frame on the other side, and then in the back, I'll show you where I put them. I put one up in there, as well as the other one on the plastic here. And to get this one on, I took this entire piece of plastic off. I found that was the easiest way to get to it. And then to wire everything up, I took this piece of plastic out. I've got my 2-way radio antenna excess. There's the mount there, but the excess is tucked down in here as well. And that allowed me to get to it to screw the watertight connectors. The LED whips are Booger whips. They're 30-inch dual animated whips. And then the clamps that I use to mount them are Tusk brand from Rocky Mountain ATV. These are 2-inch clamps, and then they also swivel. So the weird angles on this cage, there just wasn't a good spot to mount them straight up and down. I know this is here from the factory, but there's not 2 of them. And I didn't want to weld on a brand new machine. A, because I'm a terrible welder, and B, because there's clamps out there that are a lot easier. So I've got those, and I'm going to save this as a flag mount for some places that require a flag. And then I have the reverse pods, again up there on the switch. And then of course everything's tucked back here. This kind of obnoxious coil is for that Swamp Donkey unit. And the only reason it's still on there is I just want to run it for a while to make sure there's not going to be any problems before I cut it back. So that is it. I'm really happy with how everything turned out. It's good and clean, and fingers crossed it really won't require any maintenance or pulling things out and troubleshooting problems. So we should be good to go in that regard. If you have any questions about how I did anything, I'd be happy to answer them. For now, the light bar is going to stay up here. This is going to eat away at me until I can get some brackets, but I think the aftermarket will probably come up with a bracket that'll mount here, and I'll just notch the windshield out and then mount the light bar lower down. This is a 37 3/4 inch light bar. It's just from Rural King, nothing special, but it gets the job done. So stay tuned to the channel. Please like and subscribe to my videos, and I'll keep putting content out as long as you guys keep watching it. Thanks.